Back here with another Orioles rebuild update. This is the 2024 offseason planning episode. I have not updated as much lately. Just haven't been playing the game as much, but still very much here, and we'll probably be doing more posts here moving forward than I have been recently. But anyways, so 2024 offseason heading into the 2025 season is going to be a big one for the Orioles. And just in case somebody is watching and hasn't been following along, I took over in 2020, went 56 wins, then 68 wins, and in 2022 won 88 games and tied for the second wild card and lost the play-in for the wild card game. So it wasn't the wild card game, it was the play-in to get in that, and I lost that. 92 wins in 23 and won the division. 89 wins in 24, made the playoffs with the first wild card spot and advanced to the ALCS. So right in the middle of a prime winning window, and with an off season that, man, is just pretty going to be pretty a lot of big decisions, I guess, and it's going to determine a lot about the course of the team moving forward. So I'm going to go here to the front office. And so I have about $23 million to spend right now for next year's payroll, but I can adjust that a lot in that I've got a $9 million team option on Jordan Hicks, could trade him or decline the option. Same thing with Luis Castillo, a $10 million option. Also could move some guys out, such as Hayes, Edmonds, Urshela, all those guys. I'll get into kind of my thinking on that, but not all of them have to be back if I need to create salary room for other guys. And I also can go to my budgets here. I could put less into player development this year. Want to leave the draft budget about there. I could also decide not to sign an international free agent this year and get another $5 million there. So there's some things I can do to definitely open up a lot more money for my payroll, but it's going to be difficult. There's a lot of if-then scenarios too. There's a lot of different directions I could go where one decision will affect like the next five, and I'll get into that here. The biggest story, or I guess the biggest decisions, the headline decisions, are Alex Ferdugo is a free agent. He won the MVP in 23, and then in 24 put up 4.5 WAR despite missing 40 games due to injury. So would have been in the MVP race again had he not been injured. And Verdugo is looking for a 9-year deal at $32.8 million average salary. I will not go anywhere near that. I think if I could get him on a 4 or 5 year deal down with an average salary below $30 million, I'd consider it. And so we'll see where that goes. The other big decision free agency wise is Hermann Marquez, who has put up 4.2 and 4.3 WAR in his 2 seasons with me. He pitches well in Camden Yards. He's had success, which is a big thing because I've traded for a lot of really good pitchers and they come over and they really struggle for one reason or another. Maybe it's the park or any other reason. They just don't live up to their pedigree and their past success, but Marquez has. So that's why it's difficult to let him go. But he's going to be 30 when the next season starts. He wants a 8-year deal with an average annual salary of $27.625 million. If I could get him on a 4-year deal, maybe a 5th option year for, in the mid-20s, I'll consider it. But again, it's going to affect a lot of other things if I decide to bring him in for that salary. And at 30 years old, I hesitate to do that. I'll go back and kind of talk how those guys fit into the bigger roster scheme as I go through. But just to go through the roster, Rutschman will be back and Marchand will be back and up next year. No changes at catcher. Hopefully Rutschman will bounce back. He had a pretty disappointing season. And these stats up here, if anybody's looking as I'm talking, are for the postseason. And so don't pay attention to that. Not of the regular season, if anybody's looking at it. And then second base and third base is interesting. I have about 6 guys who are vying for the 4 spots. Those 4 spots being second base, third base, and then 2 backup infield spots. Edmund and Urshela are both in their last year of team control. I mean, they were my 1 and 3 hitters there down the stretch. I traded for Urshela at the deadline. I'm possibly losing Verdugo, my number 2 hitter. But I'm not sure I'm going to keep both of Edmund and Urshela. I will probably keep one of them. And the other guys that are in the mix here for those 4 spots, they got Edmund, Urshela, and then I've got Rylan Bannon, who had a great 2022 and 23. He started terrible, and I sent him down, and he came back up and was good towards the end of the year. And then last year was good. He only had 153 plate appearances because of a couple different injuries. .9 WAR, 109 runs created plus. He's 28 now though. So, but I think he might be a solid player and a much cheaper alternative to Urshela or Edman. And then we've of course got Nick Matan, who let's go to his batting stats in 2022, won Rookie of the Year with 6.9 WAR, and then 23 3.5 WAR, and then last year just tanked. 0.3 WAR, a 77 runs created plus. But man, he had two really good seasons before that. He's also 27, also almost 28 now, and he's cheaper than Urshela Edman. So, and then the other two guys, Caden Grenier, who just ripped it up in AAA in 23 with 4 WAR. And then last year he was up most of the year for me, but mainly in a utility role because he can play all 4 infield positions well. But he put up .9 WAR and 106 runs created plus. So he's 28 now as well. So none of these guys are super young, but he's cheaper and he has option years. And I think with more responsibility and more playing time could probably perform really well, perhaps as well as a guy like Edman. And then lastly, I've got Drew Bowser. He's just 23. He's a first-round pick, supplemental round in 2020. And he last year spent most of the year at AAA. He had 409 plate appearances and put up 2.6 WAR. He's solid. And 83 plate appearances in the majors, .4 WAR, and 95 runs created plus, so almost league average. And he can play he can play second, third, and short. So those are the 6 guys vying for those 4 spots. You want to consider age, you want to consider their past track record, but also their salary. And so Edman's very versatile, Urshela's not. So not sure what I'm going to do there, but those are kind of the 6 guys that I have in mind for those 4 spots. I'll probably end up keeping 5 of them and option 1 to the minors for depth. We'll see what happens, though. And then Gunnar Henderson will be my shortstop. And those other guys like Bowser, Grenier, they'll get in there and get some playing time there for sure. But Henderson will be the main shortstop, at least to start the season. It's his job to lose. And then right fielder, you talked about Ferdugo. If I sign Ferdugo, I think that'll be the end of Austin Hayes for me, just because it'll be a way that I can cut $6 or $8 million off my payroll. Hayes is a solid player. He puts up around 2 WAR per season. This last year, he put up 2.9 WAR and his best runs created plus, but his walk rate was the same, his strikeout rate was the same, his BABIP was way high. So he just had better luck on balls in play. He's a solid player. He's a leader. The fans love him, but he's 29, he's getting expensive, and I've only got him for 2 more years. So he's a guy who I could possibly move on from. Byron Buxton, I think I'm ready to move on from. I might have to eat some of his contract. He's got next year at $5.8 million left and then a player option. But I think I'm just ready to move on from him. And I've got a guy that I'm going to target in a trade and will likely trade some of those extra infield pieces as part of the deal. That's Jason Rosario, who is in real life a Padres prospect, but here he has played 3 years for the Padres, 22 through 24. He put up 4.7, 2.8, and 5.8 WAR. His bat was well above average for 2 of the 3 years. He's a solid center fielder. His personality sucks, but he's got 3 years of team control left. And the one complication is he's left-handed. If I have so many left-handed players, especially if Verdugo comes back, I might back off on Rosario because I will have like 6 or 7 left-handed bats in when I'm playing righties. And so back to the team. And then Trevor Larnach will probably be back at DH. Had a down year last year, but the 2 years before that was great. So we'll see what happens there. A lot of decisions to make, and I'll see kind of how the pieces affect one another as I make trades and try to re-sign guys. And there'll be a lot, like I said, a lot of different if-then scenarios where one decision could have a big effect on the next 5 decisions I make. Going over the pitching side, Asa Lacy, he's going to win AL Cy Young and Rookie of the Year. I'm pretty confident. He's going to be a number 1 starter. Marquez, I talked about. We'll see what happens. Jack Flaherty is a guy I could potentially move to open up a lot of room. Money-wise, was fantastic for the Cardinals, the best pitcher in the league for like 3 years in a row, and then I traded for him, and he had an arm injury. He only put up 2.5 WAR, which is still, a bit above league average, but coming off, I think, back-to-back Cy Young awards, not very good. And his contract in 2025 is going to make $24.2 million, and he's got an opt-out where he can make $24.2 million for 2 more seasons. I've already kind of started to see if teams are interested in him and they're not. Teams are cold on him because he had a down year, he had the arm problem, and man, I might just have to suck it up and keep him and hope he bounces back and then opts out. Because if he has another down year, he's not going to opt out, and I'm on the hook for that money. So for the next 2 years, so that's really a roadblock to signing Marquez. If I could find a taker for Flaherty, I could then use that money to sign Marquez, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. Luis Castillo, a $10 million option year. If I don't re-sign Marquez, though, I want him as my number 3 starter. I want pitching depth. So DL Hall will be in the rotation again as well. And then Grayson Rodriguez will probably get a shot depending on, because I think probably only 2 of Marquez, Flaherty, and Castillo will be back. It's just a matter of what 2. So Grayson Rodriguez will get a shot. I've also got some guys in the minor leagues who'll get a shot. The bullpen is where I'll see a lot of turnover. Hicks, I don't think I'm going to pick up the $9 million option. I will probably try to trade him because there is some trade interest. Feltman will be back. Jones has been the best reliever in baseball, really, for 22 and 23, arguably the best reliever, and then had a down year this year, but he still has a lot of trade value. So I might deal him, but he's got a great track record and he's still cheap, so might not. Smith and Bradley will not be back. Chafin will not be back, and maybe I will bring in these guys as on cheap deals to fill up my bullpen, but I'm not going to proactively re-sign them before they get to free agency. The bullpen is where I'm going to try to cut costs this year, promote some guys, sign some cheap relievers on deals. When you're playing this game and you're starting to get into areas where you're having to make tough financial decisions, the bullpen is the first area I look to save money on my roster because you can normally fill out a decent bullpen for cheap. Although it sure is nice to be able to spend $10 million on an ace reliever. J.D. Hammer, I think, will be back. He's still a cheap option. And Mitchell Stone is a guy who will be in the long reliever role / maybe 5th starter role if I have injuries, as well as some other guys that are on the 40-man. So that's the roster. Oh, and I guess I should show the outfielders. I forgot to show this. The outfielders who will be in to replace for maybe Verdugo, maybe Hayes, depending on where I go. I've got so much outfield depth. Fabian was up some of this year. He will probably be in a platoon with somebody. He's a righty. He'll probably play versus lefties. He had 112 plate appearances and put up a 124 runs created plus for me. And then Reese Albert, who is the guy who's gotten some playing time up in 2023 for me, and then was not up at all in 2024, but he had a great season in AAA. He's 25. He's a third-round pick from 2020. Put up 3.4 WAR. He can play all 3 outfield positions. He's a lefty bat, which I just have so many of. He'll be in a battle for the left-handed hitting outfield spot I have with this guy, Daniel Cabrera, who last year, he was up for me in 58 plate appearances and put up a 132 runs created plus. And as you can see here, 2022, he crushed AAA pitching in limited time, and then 2023 crushed AAA pitching with a 126. And then last year, he was up and down some, so he only got 342 plate appearances, but put up a 141 runs created plus. So really, Cabrera and Albert are both ready for prime time, but I only probably have room for one of them. I could trade one, but I'd rather keep the other one in the minors as depth, so I have somebody really reliable in the need of a call-up. So went a little out of order there, but I meant to give the rundown on who will replace either Hayes or Verdugo, depending on which corner outfielder I keep. So those are all the decisions. Really not sure what I'm going to do with some of these things, and money will have a factor in it, and the long-term deals that some Verdugo and Marquez want. So anyways, just rambling at that point. That's the basic nuts and bolts, and my next update, I'll walk through the decisions that I made once I make them and what the team looks like heading into 2025.